There are moments in life when something begins to shift quietly around the soul. Moments when the atmosphere feels different, even though nothing has visibly changed. It is the sense described in Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1. The feeling of something unseen moving toward the surface. Many who have walked through deep betrayal understand this sensation. Because long before justice becomes visible, it starts as a gentle stirring in the spirit. Before we begin this journey, it is a blessing to know from which part of the world you are watching, and at what hour of the day God has guided you to this message. Truly, it is a joy to witness how the Lord gathers hearts from every corner of the earth, uniting them in one spirit and in one truth. The heart begins to notice that the weight it once carried no longer feels the same. The anger begins to loosen. The pain begins to soften. The memories that once felt sharp begin losing their sting. This change does not come from denial or forgetfulness. It comes from the quiet work of the Lord, the one who watches everything even when others believe their actions are hidden. For those who endured cruelty from a narcissist, there comes a time when the silence of heaven is not silence at all, but preparation. It is the truth found in Psalm chapter 34, verse 17, where it says that the Lord hears the cries of the broken. Every tear shed in secret was seen. Every moment of humiliation was recorded. Every cruel word spoken toward you echoed far louder in the spiritual realm than in the natural one. And when heaven moves, it does not move with noise. It moves with precision. The shift begins in ways the human mind does not immediately understand. The narcissist who once appeared untouchable begins to lose the strength of their own illusions. The alliances they trusted no longer hold their shape. The people who once clapped for their actions begin withdrawing slowly without explanation. What once seemed to empower them now weakens them. What once fed their pride now exposes their emptiness. For a long time, it may have felt as though their victory was certain. Their lies were believed. Their image was protected. Their manipulation went unchallenged. But spiritual truth does not disappear because people ignore it. The seeds of harm they planted did not vanish. They waited, they grew. They matured into a harvest that could not be avoided. And now that harvest is beginning to reach them with a weight they did not expect. Yet the most profound part of this season is not what is happening to the narcissist. It is what is happening around you. Something is lifting you. Something is stabilizing you. Something is awakening courage that once felt lost. Those who walk with the Lord often find that elevation begins long before circumstances change. It begins in the heart. It begins in the clarity that breaks through confusion. It begins in the peace that makes no sense to anyone except those who have experienced the presence of the Lord. Romans chapter 8 verse 28 tells of a promise that all things work together for good for those who love him, not some things, not only pleasant things, but all things, even the betrayal, even the abandonment, even the injustice that once made breathing feel heavy. These experiences did not destroy you. They prepared you. They shaped wisdom within you. They sharpened your discernment. They taught you the difference between empty charm and genuine character. They opened your eyes to deception that once hid behind smiles and promises. They awakened the strength that now rises quietly in your spirit. And just as this transformation begins, the people who once targeted you start sensing something they cannot describe. They feel the shift. They sense that the spiritual covering around you no longer allows them access. They feel the weight of conviction when your name enters their thoughts. Their attempts to gossip about you lose their energy. Their efforts to sabotage you lose their effectiveness. Their desire to see you fall loses its power because the Lord has stepped between you and their intentions. Isaiah chapter 54 verse 17 says that no weapon formed against you shall prosper. It does not say the weapons will not form. It says they will fail. And that is exactly what is beginning to unfold. The weapons formed in secrecy no longer hold force. The whispers meant to destroy your character no longer find soil to grow in. The plans designed to keep you small no longer attach themselves to your destiny. The spiritual authority surrounding your life becomes stronger than the voices that once targeted you. In this season, the Lord is not only lifting you, but revealing who you have become through the trials. People who meet you now see a calm they cannot explain. They see resilience that was not learned in comfort, but through endurance. They see stability that reflects the assurance written in Psalm chapter 23, verse 4, where, even in the valley of shadow, fear does not win. You walk differently now, not with arrogance, not with pride, but with the grace of someone who understands that survival was never the final goal. Transformation was. Healing was. Strength was. And as this quiet transformation grows, the atmosphere around your life begins to shift in a way the narcissist can no longer ignore. They may pretend not to notice. They may act They may deny the truth to others. But internally they feel the difference. The spiritual doors they once pushed are now closed. The shadows they once hid behind now expose their intentions. The confidence they once used as a mask now cracks under the weight of their own choices. And while their world becomes unsettled, yours becomes anchored. Not because hardship disappeared, but because the Lord is revealing the power written in Isaiah chapter 41 verse 10. The promise that says, "Do not fear, for the Lord is with you and will strengthen you and uphold you." This is the beginning of a shift that no human hand can reverse. A shift that moves quietly yet undeniably. A shift that separates you from those who meant you harm and leads you toward a season where peace guides your steps with gentleness and certainty. When you look closely at the way a narcissist forms alliances, you start to realize something unsettling. They don't choose people. They choose usefulness. They don't connect through honesty. They connect through advantage. And when someone like that decides to hurt you, they never do it alone. They gather spectators, participants, silent supporters, and sometimes even a little audience of people who enjoy chaos as long as it isn't happening to them. At first, it looks like connection. It looks like loyalty. It looks like, wow, they really have people who care about them. But over time, something begins to shift beneath the surface, something slow and quiet, something they don't even see happening until it's too late. Because alliances built on harming someone else are not alliances at all. They are temporary agreements between people who feel empty inside and need destruction to feel alive. These bonds do not have roots. They have wounds, and wounds eventually open, bleed, and demand attention. In the beginning, the people around the narcissist feel energized by the drama. They enjoy the stories, the gossip, the small explosions. They feel important, included, part of something. The narcissist gives them a sense of being in the inner circle, a place where secrets are whispered and someone else, usually you, the target. But as time passes, these same people start to feel the consequences of attaching themselves to someone who survives off manipulation. They start noticing the way the narcissist talks about everyone, even the people closest to them. They begin witnessing how the narcissist twists words, exaggerates stories, rewrites memories, and shifts blame so quickly that no one can even keep up. And slowly, a realization forms inside these alliances. If they treat everyone like this, eventually they will treat me like this too. That is the first crack. And the narcissist doesn't even notice it forming. While they are busy orchestrating drama, while they're busy ensuring you look like the problem, the people they rely on are quietly pulling away in their minds, even if they haven't moved their bodies yet. They start withholding trust. They start doubting the narcissist's stories. They start asking themselves why they feel anxious every time the narcissist calls. They start noticing the exhaustion that always seems to follow being in the narcissist's presence. And even if they don't say anything out loud, energy never lies. People can sense when something is off. They can sense when a person's spirit is draining them. They can sense when the connection is no longer a connection, but an obligation. And that's when the second crack forms: indifference. The narcissist depends on attention, good, bad, chaotic, dramatic, any form of emotional electricity. The moment people grow indifferent, the narcissist begins losing the oxygen they need. But here's the irony. They don't notice the lack of attention until it's completely gone. They are too consumed with controlling the narrative, too focused on you as their target, too obsessed with winning a story you've already walked away from. Meanwhile, their supporters are quietly drifting. They stop defending them. They stop repeating their stories. They stop reacting to their outbursts. They stop showing up when drama erupts. They stop believing everything they say. And eventually, they stop caring. This is where the narcissist begins to panic, not because they realize they've done wrong, but because their audience is shrinking. Their power does not come from truth. Their power comes from attention. Remove attention, and everything they built begins to collapse. The people once eager to join the chaos now feel uncomfortable. They recognize patterns. They recall moments that didn't sit right. They remember the times the narcissist exaggerated, twisted, or manipulated. They reflect on arguments that suddenly make more sense from your perspective. And then comes the moment every narcissist dreads. Someone else begins questioning the story. It might be small, at first a raised eyebrow, a hesitant silence when the narcissist complains about you, a simple, "Are you sure that's what happened?" That single question is enough to send the narcissist spiraling internally. Because deep inside, they know the truth is fragile. They know the story they told about you has holes. They know if anyone asks too many questions, the entire narrative falls apart. And the moment one person doubts, others begin to doubt too. Doubt spreads. Truth breathes. Lies lose oxygen. And the narcissist begins to feel it. They become irritated more easily. They start complaining about smaller things. They become paranoid about who is turning against them. They accuse, they interrogate, they try to force loyalty from people who no longer feel loyal. They desperately attempt to regain control, not knowing they have already lost it. Because once an alliance begins to crumble, it cannot be rebuilt. People who have seen the truth cannot unsee it. People who have felt drained cannot pretend they feel energized. People who have witnessed manipulation cannot convince themselves it was just a misunderstanding. And the narcissist feels the shift. They feel people pulling away. They feel conversations drying up. They feel the silence that surrounds them now. And instead of looking inward, instead of taking responsibility, instead of acknowledging their own behavior, they do what they always do. They blame you. They convince themselves that people are turning against them because of something you did, something you said, something you must be doing behind the scenes. They tell themselves you're manipulating people, even though you've been minding your own life. They tell themselves you're trying to ruin their reputation, even though their own actions have done the job perfectly. They tell themselves everyone is betraying them at the same time, not realizing they are the common denominator. And when their alliances crack, the narcissist begins to unravel. Not because you fought them, but because their own behavior finally returned to them through the people who once supported them. They are left asking, why is everyone acting differently? But the answer is simple. The energy they projected finally came back home. And for the first time, they have to sit with the truth they worked so hard to bury. There comes a moment when a narcissist's mask, the one they have carefully crafted through charm, confidence, and rehearsed emotions, starts to slip, not because they choose to reveal their true self, but because maintaining the illusion becomes too heavy for them to carry. A mask is easy to wear when life is going their way, when the attention is flowing, when people are listening, when their stories are believed, when their ego is constantly fed. But masks crack under pressure. Masks crumble when the supply weakens. Masks fall when truth, timing, and consequence collide at the same moment. And that is when the narcissist's flawless image begins to dissolve, piece by painful piece. At first, it's subtle small inconsistencies in their story. Moments where they contradict themselves, reactions that don't match the situation, emotions that feel slightly off. The people around them don't always notice it, but you can feel it. You sense the shift before anyone else because you've seen both sides of them. You've seen the charming version they present to the world and the cold, calculated version they use behind closed doors. When the mask starts failing, it doesn't happen with a dramatic explosion. It happens with 1,000 tiny fractures that eventually reveal what has been underneath the whole time. And the narcissist feels it happening. They feel the tension rising in their chest, the fear they won't admit to, the internal desperation that whispers, "You're losing control." They try harder to appear put together. They overcompensate with louder confidence, exaggerated friendliness, or stronger accusations against you. Anything to distract from the fact that their carefully polished identity is falling apart. One of the first signs is how quickly they begin reacting to things that never used to bother them. A harmless question suddenly feels like an attack. A simple boundary becomes an insult. A calm disagreement becomes betrayal. They grow hypersensitive to anything that suggests their story might not be fully believed. They watch people's faces more closely. They look for signs of doubt. They try to read every silence as loyalty or danger. Their paranoia grows quietly at first, just a whisper beneath the surface. But it eventually becomes a constant hum in their mind. Narcissists thrive when they feel in control of the narrative. The mask is part of that control. So the moment they sense someone sees behind it, even a little, they react with panic disguised as anger. They raise their voice. They become defensive. They repeat their story again and again, adding new, exaggerated details to make themselves sound more innocent, more heroic, more victimized, whatever role will protect their image. But lies are heavy. Masks are heavy. And you can only carry a false identity for so long before the weight forces you to drop something: your composure, your charm, your ability to pretend. The narcissist starts making mistakes. They forget the version of the story they told to different people. They say something on Monday and deny it on Friday. They promise one thing but act in another direction. They claim they don't care about you, but bring your name up in every conversation. They demand others stop talking about you, even as they talk about you non-stop. These contradictions expose them. Not loudly, not dramatically, but gradually enough that people begin noticing the strange gaps in their behavior. When the mask slips further, the narcissist becomes emotional in all the wrong ways. Not genuinely emotionally. They cry without tears. They apologize without sincerity. They make dramatic displays of pain, stress, or victimhood whenever someone questions them, but the performance begins to look forced. People sense the difference between real emotion and rehearsed theatrics, and the narcissist knows this, which only adds to their panic. The more afraid they are of being exposed, the more dramatic they become. Their reactions grow larger, but their believability grows smaller. The mask, once smooth and polished, now sits crooked on their face, revealing jagged edges of truth they've spent years trying to hide. You begin to see flashes of their real self moments of raw anger, bitterness, entitlement, jealousy, or coldness that slip out before they can catch them. Moments where their voice hardens, their eyes narrow, their tone sharpens, their kindness evaporates. Moments where you can tell the person in front of you is nothing like the persona they pretend to be. And these moments are becoming more frequent, more intense, more obvious. The narcissist feels exposed even when no one has said anything. They feel judged even when no one has spoken. They feel attacked even when no one has moved. Their fear of being truly seen becomes a constant pressure beneath their skin. A pressure that makes them agitated, impulsive, unpredictable. So they lash out. They blame others. They point fingers in every direction but inward. They accuse people of conspiring against them. They insist they're being misunderstood or targeted. They try frantically to convince the world they are still the same person they pretended to be. But the act is no longer convincing. Eventually, their real self breaks through the cracks in ways they can't hide. The anger they used to control now bursts through unfiltered. The manipulation they used to disguise now appears clearly. The selfishness they used to mask now shows openly. And the people who once believed in their charm now feel something unsettling. Discomfort, doubt, distance. The narcissist senses this shift, but doesn't understand why it's happening. They don't see that their own behavior is the cause. They tell themselves that people are acting differently for no reason, or that you must be influencing them, or that the world is turning against them. They never consider the truth that their own mask is slipping because they can no longer carry the weight of pretending. The collapse begins internally, long before anyone sees it externally. Their emotions feel unstable. Their thoughts feel scattered. Their confidence feels fragile. Their identity feels threatened. And without the mask, without the persona, without the illusion, they feel naked in a way they cannot tolerate. Because the one thing a narcissist cannot face is their true self. And yet now, for the first time, that true self is showing whether they want it to or not. What happens in the private world of a narcissist when the judgment they mocked for years finally begins to close in on them is something few people ever witness, because they hide their inner collapse behind the same mask they use for everything else. On the outside, they may still smile, still pretend, still speak loudly, still insist they are fine, still claim they are unbothered, but inside, something entirely different is happening. There is a shaking that begins deep within them, a kind of spiritual trembling that cannot be explained away by stress or frustration. It is the weight of truth pressing against every lie they ever told, every manipulation they ever used, every heart they ever wounded without remorse. The world around them may look the same, but the atmosphere inside their mind begins to shift. The confidence they once displayed so effortlessly now feels thin and unstable. The certainty they once lived by now slips through their fingers like sand. The boldness they once used to intimidate others now melts into quiet fear they cannot speak aloud. The narcissist is not used to silence, but suddenly silence feels louder than any confrontation. Silence forces them to sit with themselves, and that is something they have spent a lifetime avoiding. Even their thoughts become restless, circling in patterns that no longer offer comfort. They remember things they did, things they said, things they laughed about, moments where they felt powerful at the expense of someone else. These memories return not as entertainment or pride, but as sharp reminders that something is shifting in their life. They do not call it judgment, but they feel its weight. They feel it each time they wake in the early hours of the morning with their chest tight and their thoughts racing. They feel it each time they sense that no one fully believes them anymore. They feel it each time they replay conversations, trying to figure out why people seem more distant, more cautious, more alert. The social power they used to enjoy now feels unstable. The places where they once felt admired now feel colder. Even the people they used as loyal supporters begin showing small signs of hesitation. Their smiles look shorter. Their responses sound more careful. Their eyes reflect a hint of doubt. The narcissist notices every detail. They are experts at reading external reactions because their entire identity depends on the approval of others. So when judgment begins to enter their private world, the first thing they notice is how people no longer move around them the same way. They react by tightening their control. They repeat their version of events more aggressively. They try to rebuild their image through exaggerated stories, forced apologies, or dramatic declarations of innocence. But the more they try to repair their image, the more obvious the cracks become. Their frustration grows because they no longer feel in control of how others see them. In the quiet places of their mind, they begin to feel hunted not by you, not by people, but by truth. A truth they cannot silence. A truth they cannot outrun. A truth that whispers in the dark when no one is watching. Judgment in their private world does not always appear as lightning or disaster. Sometimes it appears as confusion, sometimes as fear, sometimes as anger that has no direction, sometimes as a deep uneasiness that follows them everywhere they go. It affects their sleep. It affects their concentration. It affects their relationships. It affects their sense of security. The narcissist, who once lived with absolute certainty, now feels the ground beneath them shifting in ways they cannot control or predict. Their mind becomes a battlefield. Small worries turn into obsessions. Minor problems feel catastrophic. Simple setbacks feel like attacks. They start imagining threats where none exist. They feel watched even when alone. They feel judged even when no one has spoken. They feel trapped by circumstances they once felt strong enough to manage. There is also a strange reversal happening inside them. The same mental games they used against others now turn inward. The lies they told others begin echoing back at them. The stories they constructed no longer make sense even to themselves. The blame they placed on innocent people now sits heavy in their chest. The arrogance they once displayed now leaves them feeling exposed. They begin questioning themselves in ways they never have before. Not out of humility, but out of fear that their world is slipping out of their hands. When the narcissist feels this internal pressure, they try to escape it through distractions and entertainment, attention-seeking, sudden hobbies, reckless decisions, impulsive behavior, anything to avoid sitting still long enough to face the weight inside them. But distraction works for only a short time. The heaviness returns. the uneasiness returns. The sense that consequences are closing in returns. Eventually they begin to sense that the patterns of their life are repeating. The same broken relationships, the same arguments, the same losses, the same disappointments, the same frustrations, the same emptiness. They realize that everywhere they go, the same problems follow. Everywhere they move, the same storms rise. Everywhere they speak, the same tension grows. They do not see that their character is the cause, but they feel something is deeply wrong. In moments of honesty, moments they rarely admit to anyone, they begin to wonder if everything they built was made of fragile material. They begin to question if their charm was ever real, or if it was simply a performance. They begin to consider whether people liked them or only tolerated them. They begin to sense that the very reality they created is now turning against them. And the thing that terrifies a narcissist most is the loss of control over their own narrative. Judgment in their private world looks like a slow unraveling of the life they once controlled with ease. It looks like restless nights, heavy mornings, and days filled with silent panic. It looks like conversations that feel forced, relationships that feel strained, and choices that feel heavier than before. It looks like a mirror they can no longer look into without seeing the truth they tried to hide. And while they will never admit it out loud, they know something has changed. They know the air around them feels different. They know the protection they believed in has weakened. They know the consequences they dismissed for years are beginning to catch up. And so, behind every confident smile, behind every loud denial, behind every performance of strength, there is a quiet mind shaking under the weight of everything they refuse to face. There is a reason the rising strength inside you unsettles the narcissist in a way nothing else ever has. It is not simply that you are healing. It is not only that you are standing taller or speaking more clearly. It is that your spirit, once weighed down by confusion and pain, is now being lifted into a place where their influence can no longer reach you. This shift does not happen overnight. It begins quietly, like a soft awakening in the center of your soul. You start seeing things differently. You start understanding moments that once confused you. You begin recognizing what was toxic, what was manipulative, what was meant to break you, and what was meant to teach you. And as this clarity grows, something inside you begins to glow with a new kind of strength. This strength is not loud. It does not shout or fight or demand attention. It is the kind of strength that comes from peace, from truth, from a deeper awareness that the wounds you carried were not signs of weakness, but signs of survival. And the narcissist feels this awakening long before they understand it. They do not call it spiritual growth. They do not call it healing. To them, it feels like something slipping away, something they once controlled, now drifting out of reach. A narcissist thrives when someone is confused, exhausted, anxious, or uncertain. But when you begin rising from these places, when your heart grows steady again, when your thoughts become clearer, when your voice grows calm and stable, the narcissist senses a threat they cannot name. They do not fear your anger. They fear your clarity. They do not fear your distance. They fear your awakening. They do not fear your silence. They fear the peace behind it. Peace has a language the narcissist cannot understand. Peace is not reactive. Peace does not argue. Peace does not chase. Peace does not explain itself repeatedly. Peace does not fight to be believed. Peace simply exists. And when peace enters your spirit, the narcissist feels something in their own world beginning to collapse. They feel the loss of control even when no words are spoken. They feel the shift in power even though nothing dramatic has happened. They feel the presence of something stronger guiding you into a new season. You begin carrying yourself differently in ways you may not even notice. Your steps become steadier. Your choices become wiser. Your emotions settle like a calm river after a long storm. What used to disturb you no longer shakes you. What used to confuse you now feels simple. What used to intimidate you now appears small. And the narcissist sees it. They see the light returning to your eyes. They see the calm returning to your voice. They see the confidence slowly rebuilding inside your soul. They see that the person they once counted on to doubt everything is now beginning to trust inner truth. They see that the person they once controlled through fear is now guided by courage. They see that the person they once wounded is now protected by grace. This realization terrifies them, not because they care about losing you, but because they depend on keeping those they use in a weakened state. When you rise, they fall. When you heal, they lose their power. When you become whole, they lose their influence. It is not your anger that frightens them. It is your absence. It is your peace. It is your self-respect. It is your ability to recognize what you deserve. It is your decision to no longer entertain what once drained you. The narcissist feels powerless when you reach this place. Their usual tactics no longer work. Their emotional games no longer confuse you. Their manipulative words no longer move you. Their false charm no longer impresses you. Their attempts to provoke reactions fall into empty silence. And nothing unsettles a narcissist more than silence filled with strength. They try to test you again, not because they believe they can break you, but because they hope they can find even a small piece of the old version of you. The version who explained everything. The version who forgave too quickly. The version who tried to understand them at the cost of understanding yourself. But that version is fading. The new strength inside you forms a shield around your heart. Not a hard shield, not a bitter shield, but a shield of clarity. A shield of truth. A shield of wisdom. You begin recognizing what deserves your attention and what no longer does. You begin seeing your value without waiting for someone else to confirm it. You begin treating your own spirit with kindness, patience, and respect. The narcissist sees this and feels a deep discomfort they cannot articulate. They are used to drawing power from the weakness of others. But your rising strength reflects their emptiness. Your clarity reveals their confusion. Your healing highlights their broken patterns. Your peace exposes their inner chaos. It is like holding up a mirror they never wanted to look into. And whenever they look at you now, even from a distance, they catch a glimpse of their own truth. Not the image they crafted, not the persona they show others, the truth they have buried, the truth they fear, the truth they cannot handle. Your strength becomes a reminder of their lack of growth. Your maturity becomes a reminder of their immaturity. Your peace becomes a reminder of the storms inside them, and they cannot stand it. So they react. Some become angrier, some become quieter, some grow desperate, some disappear completely. Not because you harmed them, but because your rising spirit has become too honest, too clear, too bright for the shadows they live in. What they once touched freely, they can no longer reach. What they once controlled, they can no longer influence. What they once broke, they can no longer bend. And deep inside, beneath all their denial, they know the truth. They know something has changed permanently. They know the person who once held them with compassion now holds themselves with dignity. They know the person who once tried to save them is now saving themselves. They know your rising strength is not temporary. It is a turning of the page. a new chapter that no longer centers them, a new path that no longer allows them a seat at the table of your heart. And this truth, as quiet as it is, becomes the loudest message they will ever hear. What happens in the private world of a narcissist when the judgment they mocked for years finally begins to close in on them is something few people ever witness, because they hide their inner collapse behind the same mask they use for everything else. On the outside, they may still smile, still pretend, still speak loudly, still insist they are fine, still claim they are unbothered, but inside, something entirely different is happening. There is a shaking that begins deep within them, a kind of spiritual trembling that cannot be explained away by stress or frustration. It is the weight of truth pressing against every lie they ever told, every manipulation they ever used, every heart they ever wounded without remorse. The world around them may look the same, but the atmosphere inside their mind begins to shift. The confidence they once displayed so effortlessly now feels thin and unstable. The certainty they once lived by now slips through their fingers like sand. The boldness they once used to intimidate others now melts into quiet fear they cannot speak aloud. The narcissist is not used to silence, but suddenly silence feels louder than any confrontation. Silence forces them to sit with themselves, and that is something they have spent a lifetime avoiding. Even their thoughts become restless, circling in patterns that no longer offer comfort. They remember things they did, things they said, things they laughed about, moments where they felt powerful at the expense of someone else. These memories return not as entertainment or pride, but as sharp reminders that something is shifting in their life. They do not call it judgment, but they feel its weight. They feel it each time they wake in the early hours of the morning with their chest tight and their thoughts racing. They feel it each time they sense that no one fully believes them anymore. They feel it each time they replay conversations, trying to figure out why people seem more distant, more cautious, more alert. The social power they used to enjoy now feels unstable. The places where they once felt admired now feel colder. Even the people they used as loyal supporters begin showing small signs of hesitation. Their smiles look shorter. Their responses sound more careful. Their eyes reflect a hint of doubt. The narcissist notices every detail. They are experts at reading external reactions because their entire identity depends on the approval of others. So when judgment begins to enter their private world, the first thing they notice is how people no longer move around them the same way. They react by tightening their control. They repeat their version of events more aggressively. They try to rebuild their image through exaggerated stories, forced apologies, or dramatic declarations of innocence. But the more they try to repair their image, the more obvious the cracks become. Their frustration grows because they no longer feel in control of how others see them. In the quiet places of their mind, they begin to feel hunted not by you, not by people, but by truth. A truth they cannot silence. A truth they cannot outrun. A truth that whispers in the dark when no one is watching. Judgment in their private world does not always appear as lightning or disaster. Sometimes it appears as confusion, sometimes as fear, sometimes as anger that has no direction, sometimes as a deep uneasiness that follows them everywhere they go. It affects their sleep. It affects their concentration. It affects their relationships. It affects their sense of security. The narcissist, who once lived with absolute certainty, now feels the ground beneath them shifting in ways they cannot control or predict. Their mind becomes a battlefield. Small worries turn into obsessions. Minor problems feel catastrophic. Simple setbacks feel like attacks. They start imagining threats where none exist. They feel watched even when alone. They feel judged even when no one has spoken. They feel trapped by circumstances they once felt strong enough to manage. There is also a strange reversal happening inside them. The same mental games they used against others now turn inward. The lies they told others begin echoing back at them. The stories they constructed no longer make sense even to themselves. The blame they placed on innocent people now sits heavy in their chest. The arrogance they once displayed now leaves them feeling exposed. They begin questioning themselves in ways they never have before. Not out of humility, but out of fear that their world is slipping out of their hands. When the narcissist feels this internal pressure, they try to escape it through distractions and entertainment, attention-seeking, sudden hobbies, reckless decisions, impulsive behavior, anything to avoid sitting still long enough to face the weight inside them. But distraction works for only a short time. The heaviness returns. The uneasiness returns. The sense that consequences are closing in returns. Eventually they begin to sense that the patterns of their life are repeating. The same broken relationships, the same arguments, the same losses, the same disappointments, the same frustrations, the same emptiness. They realize that everywhere they go, the same problems follow. Everywhere they move, the same storms rise. Everywhere they speak, the same tension grows. They do not see that their character is the cause, but they feel something is deeply wrong. In moments of honesty, moments they rarely admit to anyone, they begin to wonder if everything they built was made of fragile material. They begin to question if their charm was ever real, or if it was simply a performance. They begin to consider whether people liked them or only tolerated them. They begin to sense that the very reality they created is now turning against them. And the thing that terrifies a narcissist most is the loss of control over their own narrative. Judgment in their private world looks like a slow unraveling of the life they once controlled with ease. It looks like restless nights, heavy mornings, and days filled with silent panic. It looks like conversations that feel forced, relationships that feel strained, and choices that feel heavier than before. It looks like a mirror they can no longer look into without seeing the truth they tried to hide. And while they will never admit it out loud, they know something has changed. They know the air around them feels different. They know the protection they believed in has weakened. They know the consequences they dismissed for years are beginning to catch up. And so, behind every confident smile, behind every loud denial, behind every performance of strength, there is a quiet mind shaking under the weight of everything they refuse to face. There comes a season when everything a narcissist has spent years building begins to collapse at the same time. And for the first time in their life, they cannot blame you for any of it. They cannot twist the story. They cannot point the finger. They cannot create a distraction. They cannot escape into another fantasy or another excuse. The collapse arrives in a way that surrounds them from all directions, touching every part of their life, every relationship they tried to manipulate, every opportunity they tried to control, every advantage they once assumed they would always have. It comes slowly at first, like a faint pressure they ignore, but soon it becomes a weight they cannot push away. They begin noticing patterns that used to work no longer work. The charm they relied on no longer opens doors. The manipulation they perfected no longer moves people. The emotional traps they used to set no longer catch anyone. The stories they tell no longer produce the same reactions. They feel something slipping, something important, something they cannot identify. Their influence weakens, their relationships crack, and their plans crumble in ways that do not make sense to them. They used to control environments with subtle gestures and carefully chosen words, but now their words fall flat, and their gestures feel empty. People no longer react the way they expect. People no longer respond with admiration, fear, or sympathy. People no longer bend to their will, and the narcissist cannot understand why. They try harder, pushing their old behaviors with greater force. They exaggerate emotions, demand attention, insist on being right, repeat their narratives, and attempt to dominate conversations with the same intensity they once used to overpower others. But these efforts only expose them more. It becomes obvious to everyone around them that something is off, something is unstable, something is not matching the surface image they are trying desperately to preserve. In their mind, they believe they are still winning, still superior, still untouchable, yet reality keeps pushing back against them. Every attempt to regain control fails. Every attempt to repair their image falls apart. Every attempt to recreate the past backfires. They experience conflict in places they once felt safe. They encounter rejection from people they once looked down on. They face silence from people who used to respond instantly. They sense resistance in places where they once controlled the atmosphere effortlessly. And the most painful part for them is that they cannot blame you for any of it. You are no longer there to absorb their projection. You are no longer present for them to accuse. You are no longer accessible for them to twist into a scapegoat. Without you, their usual cycle has no place to land. Their anger echoes back at them. Their accusations feel hollow. Their manipulation hits empty air. They stand in the center of their problems with no one to hand them to, and for the first time, they are forced to feel the consequences of their own behavior without an escape route. Their mind becomes a restless storm. They replay old conversations, old conflicts, old decisions, trying to find a way to justify themselves. But the more they revisit the past, the more they realize that the patterns were always the same. They pushed people away with their arrogance. They damaged relationships with their deceit. They destroyed trust with their selfishness. They broke loyalty with their recklessness. And all the while, they told themselves they were the victim. Now their world begins to reflect back the truth they refused to see. The same manipulation they used on others is now used against them by people who learned from watching them. The same lies they told returned through different mouths. The same betrayal they inflicted now reaches their own doorstep. Their environment becomes a mirror, revealing the seeds they planted, the decisions they made, the harm they caused. This is the collapse they cannot escape. This is the harvest they cannot prevent. In their private thoughts, they feel something tightening around their life. They feel that every direction they turn leads to another barrier. They feel pressure they cannot explain, weight they cannot remove, confusion they cannot quiet. They try to distract themselves through relationships, entertainment, work, or sudden obsessions. But the relief never lasts. The emptiness returns. The frustration returns. The sense of losing control returns. Their relationships become unstable because no one wants to carry their emotional burdens anymore. Their circle grows smaller because people become tired of their drama. Their opportunities grow fewer because their behavior becomes harder to ignore. Their reputation slowly shifts as people begin connecting the dots of past events. Their ability to manipulate becomes weaker as others learn to recognize the pattern. And through all of this, they feel a growing fear they cannot name. A fear that rises in quiet moments when they sit alone with their thoughts. They sense that the consequences they avoided for so long have finally caught up. They sense that the life they constructed through false strength is beginning to crack. They sense that the image they worshipped is beginning to collapse. They sense that something larger than them is pushing back against the world they built. The narcissist never thinks their decisions will return to them. They assume their charm will protect them. They assume their intelligence will excuse them. They assume their confidence will shield them. They assume their lies will cover them. But when every area of their life begins to crumble at once, they realize they miscalculated. They realize that a person cannot break others without eventually breaking themselves. They realize that a heart built on pride cannot hold the weight of reality forever. They realize that a life built on illusion must fall the moment truth arrives. And in that collapse, the narcissist stands in the center of everything falling apart, silently shaken by the truth they never wanted to face. No one caused this but them. No one triggered this but their own choices. No one is responsible for this collapse but the person staring back at them from the mirror they can no longer avoid. There comes a gentle moment in every long journey when the heart finally understands that peace was never something distant or unreachable, but something quietly waiting beneath all the storms that once felt overwhelming. After everything you have walked through, after the confusion, the spiritual tension, the emotional weight, the hidden battles, and the unexpected turns, there now opens a soft and steady path before you. It does not rush you. It does not pressure you. It simply invites you to breathe again. You have carried burdens that were never meant to stay on your shoulders forever. You have endured words that wounded deeply and actions that shook your confidence. You have survived seasons of loneliness, questioning, and exhaustion that felt heavier than anyone around you realized. And yet, here you stand, not broken but awakened, not lost but guided, not defeated but strengthened in ways you never imagined. The narcissist's chaos once felt like a storm you could not escape. Their anger, their games, their unpredictability, their shifting moods, their constant attempts to control your emotions created an environment where you learned to live in quiet fear, quiet restraint, quiet doubt. But now that their world is shaking, now that truth has stepped in, something beautiful is happening in your life. The air around you feels lighter. Your thoughts feel clearer. Your emotions feel calmer. For the first time in a long time, your spirit is beginning to rest. This is not just recovery, it is renewal. The renewal that comes when the weight of someone else's darkness is finally removed from your soul. The renewal that comes when the confusion lifts and your worth becomes visible again. The renewal that comes when your heart realizes it no longer has to shrink itself to survive. What you feel now is the gentle return of yourself. Your voice returning, your joy returning, your courage returning, your ability to breathe deeply without fear of stepping on the wrong emotion or the wrong moment. You are stepping into a life where you do not need to earn peace or chase peace or fight for peace. Peace is coming to you naturally because your spirit is no longer trapped in a place it was never meant to remain. And with every step forward, the atmosphere around you shifts. You begin to notice small things that were invisible before, moments of gratitude, moments of quiet beauty, moments where you feel held in ways that words cannot fully describe. This is the gentle reassurance that you are being led into a season where the wounds will heal. The confusion will fade, and the pain that once felt endless will become a testimony of strength, not a prison of memory. You are being restored from the inside out. The battles that drained you will not follow you into the new places being prepared for you. The voices that tried to silence you no longer have authority over your future. The fear that once gripped your heart has loosened its hold, and the peace that once felt far away now surrounds you like a quiet dawn after a long night. Rest in this moment. Let your shoulders drop. Let your breathing soften. Let your mind settle. You are safe. You are guided. You are stepping into a gentler chapter where your heart will learn to trust again, hope again, and dream again. You have walked through darkness, but darkness is not where your story ends. You are moving into light, into clarity, into calm, into a future shaped not by the harm you endured, but by the strength you gained. And as this chapter closes softly around you, may your spirit find comfort in knowing that peace is not leaving you. Peace is leading you.